Okay, so today we're talking about solving inequalities. This is going to be pretty easy breezy for you if you already know how to solve equations, because we're going to use the same rules that we use when we solve equations, except for one little new extra rule which I have written here on the left. You should take a moment and pause the video, copy this into your notebook, and then I'll talk about it when I come back. Okay, so the rule that changes here, the thing that's different about solving inequalities, is this little thing here. If you multiply or divide by a negative number, you have to flip the direction of the inequality. Okay? So an example of what I mean here is written right here. If I'm solving this inequality, remember the goal is to get x by itself. So if I'm getting x by itself, then I have to divide both sides by -2. Okay? And what happens is -2 divided by -2 gives us x. And notice what I mean by dividing and then flipping is you just flip the direction. This inequality now flips, goes from less than to greater than. And then we've got 10 divided by -2 gives me -5. Now if you're wondering why we do that, let me give you a little bit of an example here. We've got 6 is greater than 4. Alright, this is a true statement, correct? 6 is bigger than 4. So let's experiment with what happens if we divide by certain things. So let's say we divide by a +2 first. If I divide by a +2, 6 divided by 2 gives me 3. 4 divided by 2 gives me 2. And notice my answer here, 3 is still greater than 2. That's still correct. Alright? And also notice we're allowed to do this. We can do anything we want to equations or inequalities as long as we do it to both sides of the equals or the inequality. But let's tweak that a little bit. Let's take that same 6 is greater than 4, but let's, instead of divide by +2, let's divide by -2 and see what happens. 6 divided by -2 is -3, and then 4 divided by -2 is -2. Now the question is, if we leave that inequality the same, is this still true? Of course not. Remember, in negative land, the bigger the actual number gets, the smaller it actually is. So -3 is not bigger than -2. And so in order to make that true, we have to flip the direction of the inequality. And that's why we have to do it whenever we're solving an inequality. Okay? So just remember that all this stuff down here is immaterial. Just remember this big rule. If you multiply or divide a negative number by a negative number on both sides of the equation, it doesn't matter if this was -10 and these were +2's. If these were +2's that you're dividing by, you're going to leave it alone, even if this number is negative. But the only time you do it is if you're dividing both sides of the equation by that negative number. Then you flip the direction. All right, so that's the new rule. And then for inequalities, we also have to recognize that when we get our answer, it's not just one number is our answer. Inequalities give us a broad range of answers that could make the inequality true, which we're going to see when we do some examples. Okay, so usually what we do is we'll solve for the inequality and we'll get a number like I have here, but then we'll also want to graph it to show its solutions. And here's the rules for graphing, which you've probably done in a previous math class, but I'm going to review them for you just to be sure that you know how to do it. Okay, so here's the rule. Whenever we get our solution, say down here x greater than -5, we're going to put a circle, and I'll draw a little number line here and we'll graph that solution. This is how I graph. I usually just pick 3 points. I put my solution in the middle like this. And now what you need is you're going to need a circle or a closed circle over top of the solution that you have, and then you're going to have an arrow pointing in one of the directions. So the rule is for greater than or less than, you're going to put an open circle, and for greater than or equal to or less than or equal to, we're going to put a closed circle. Okay, so in this case our solution is greater than, so we'll use a open circle over top of -5, which is our solution. And now we have to decide which direction the arrow points. So the way this works in a little sort of shortcut rule that I remember is when the variable is on the left, the inequality actually points in the direction of the arrow. The inequality will point in the direction of the arrowhead. So notice my variable here is on the left. The inequality is pointing in the direction of the right direction. If that were an arrowhead, it would be pointing to the right. So that means that that particular solution has to go to the right like this. Okay? And what that means is, what this graph means, it means that I can plug in solutions, anything to the right of -5, I can plug up here and make true. Now, I can't plug in -5 because notice what happens. -5 goes in for x times a -2 makes it positive 10. 10 is not less than 10. 10 is equal to 10. So that's not true at that solution. So we have an open circle over our solution because it's not equal to, and then anything to the right of that can be plugged in for x and will make this statement true. So notice if you plug -4 in for x, -2 times -4 is positive 8. 8 is less than 10. If you plugged in -100, -100 times -2 is positive 200. -100 times -2 is positive 200, which is, no, you can't go -100. -100 is on the left side. So if you want to do positive 100, -2 times a positive 100 would be -200, which is less than 10. Okay? So there's the rules for solving inequalities. Check out the next video, and I'll do some examples that I hope that make a little more sense.